What is up, wrestling fans? It is the Two Bros Wrestling Show on the air. I'm your host, Kevin, and hopefully, you all are doing well out there in this winter storm that really was less snow and way more ice around here. Not very pretty to look at, and definitely very dangerous. Hope wherever you are that you are safe, well, and staying off the roads. Continue to be safe. But thank you for tuning in and joining us. Once again, we are without Doug this week, so I'm going to be going solo. But tonight's main event topic is one I want to hear from you on because we are talking Royal Rumble, one of my absolute favorite pay per views of the entire wrestling year, the kickoff to the road to WrestleMania. We are going to look at the matches, possible storylines moving towards Mania as to who would be legitimate contenders to win. And then we're just going to put it on the line and make some predictions and see how wrong we are when we regroup. But before we do any of that, as always, we like to kick off the show with some news. So let's hit that opening bell. After 2 weeks, where our main event topic was TNA, we're going to begin our opening bell segment with two TNA stories. First, let's talk the debut episode of TNA Thursday Night Impact on AMC and the ratings. Last week, we gave our review, which was middling. It was a cease show in my mind, and maybe I was being generous. I know it's been savaged by some. How did it perform, however? Well, 173,000 viewers is what tuned in to the debut on AMC. Those aren't WWE numbers, obviously. They're not even AEW numbers, but when you compare that to what TNA was doing on Access, it is definitely an improvement. The most recent Access TV data shows that Impact was regularly drawing less than 100,000 viewers per episode. So to get in the ballpark of 200,000 is definitely a win for the promotion. The number was viewed as such by the talent backstage, and especially, and maybe even more importantly, the suits at the suits at AMC were supposedly pleased with that number, and that is what really matters most. It will be interesting to see how those ratings come in for week 2. Obviously, we can expect a dip. Most people that are curious tune in for one. Maybe they didn't creatively bring enough that was going to pull people back for week 2. But let's hope that we gave some grace because, in my opinion, week 2 was a far, far better show and way more indicative of what I think this brand can do moving forward. So we'll continue to follow that. I said we'd have two TNA stories. So our second TNA story is also a bit of an AEW story as well. Last week, we mentioned that the Rascals were not signing with TNA, that they had left that promotion and had signed with AEW. Yeah, when the Rascals debuted on Collision, it was Myron Reed, Zachary Wentz, and Desmond Xavier, but not notably Trey Miguel, who appeared on camera. Then comes the word that Miguel was released by AEW before he'd even appeared on camera for the company. It was a wild week when it comes to Rascals news. The Wrestling Observer, among other outlets, reported that the decision was given from above, and not Tony Khan above, but above Tony Khan above. So the only people that could possibly mean is Warner Brothers Discovery executives. And so the network apparently had some issues, reportedly anyway, with some old social media posts. And when I say old, I'm talking 6-7 years old, that Trey has long since taken down and or apologized for on multiple occasions. So and not justifying anything that was said in the past, but that is so far in the past that it does make it surprising that, especially after he had been in good graces with his employers ever since then, that they would take this time to take issue and basically put a halt on him joining his Rascals brethren in AEW. But this wild ride, it was not over. So Trey had taken to social media to report that he was going to take a break from wrestling, and he was asking for his space, including that fans respect him enough to not tag him or mention him in any post or comments, but to please continue supporting the Rascals. Definitely looked like Trey Miguel was going to be walking away and taking a mental health break after this unfortunate turn of events for him. And that is until now we're back to TNA. We get to week 2 of TNA Thursday Night Impact on AMC and the Feast or Fired match where Trey Miguel made his appearance back on TNA television, where it was reported by the announce team that he had, in fact, re-signed with TNA. So the rest of the Rascals have moved on to AEW. Trey Miguel, after not making an appearance for AEW, being fired before that could happen, is both stepping away from wrestling, back in wrestling, swerved us all back with TNA. So there you have it, the saga of the Rascals over the last 2 weeks. It's definitely been a roller coaster, and but let's support both. What do you say? Let's support both the Rascals and AEW, and best of luck to Trey on his own now in TNA. Let's see what he can do. So let's move on to some more personnel-related news, but this time outside of the TNA bubble. We reported this last week that the likelihood was very strong that this was going to happen, but it is now officially a done deal that Powerhouse Hobbs, or whatever he will end up being dubbed in WWE, has signed with the Federation. He had left AEW after dropping the Trios titles on the last week edition of Collision. And Fightful Select was the ones that broke the news this week that Hobbs is now officially under contract to WWE. Be interesting to see what they rebrand him, how they position him, and whether or not they think he is ready to make an appearance at, I don't know, say a Royal Rumble that we're about ready to talk about in a minute, or in all likelihood, maybe start down in NXT. We will see. Sticking with comings and goings, after lots of rumors, the man himself made it official this week, and that is Tommaso Ciampa confirming he is leaving WWE. The Blackheart said he will be done here with his contract, and when that happens, he will not be signing. He said shortly he didn't give any indication, but Johnny Gargano was on SmackDown this past week without him, so maybe it's either already happened or WWE is content to just pay him and let his contract expire since he's expressed his wishes that he would not be resigning. There's no bridges being burned here. It doesn't sound like in his announcement. Tommaso was very complimentary of those who have helped him along the way in WWE. In particular, he had a lot of call outs for the backstage personnel and the folks that he tangled with down when he was in the NXT gold and black era of NXT, which I think most of us who love Tommaso Ciampa would admit is the golden era of Tommaso Ciampa. But this stepping away from WWE doesn't mean he's stepping away from wrestling. Tommaso made it clear that he had spent a decade traveling the world on the independents before finding his footing in WWE, where he spent an additional 10 years. He said that he hopes his next 10 years will also be spent traveling the world, but while lacing up his wrestling boots. So clearly the intention is there to do something else in wrestling. Does that mean a return to the Indies in his own schedule? Does that mean AEW? Who knows? But best of luck to Tommaso Ciampa wherever he may land. AEW had to pivot its broadcast schedule this week thanks to the winter weather that I led off our show talking about. But this was Arlington, Texas. You know, they're down in Texas doing their residency that they have going on for the next few weeks for Collision. But because of the fact that the winter weather was even going to affect Texas, they decided to cancel last night's live broadcast, and instead they taped the show in Orlando earlier this week and then aired it last night. That's not the only wrestling federation, obviously, that is having issues with this weather. Supposedly WWE, who, you know, spent 2 nights in Montreal where it was 10 degrees below zero or whatever. They were there for Friday night SmackDown as well, Saturday night's main event. With all the weather issues in the United States, they apparently have taken backup plans to the backup plans that are in place to make sure that everyone gets to Raw that needs to be on Raw on Monday. Moving back to WWE for just a second, and that is more programming news regarding SmackDown. USA is going to lose SmackDown, not permanently. We have a brief return to the former home at one time of SmackDown, that is Sci-Fi. This temporary move is being made because USA is going to soon be switching over to 24/7 coverage of the Winter Olympics. So you'll want to make sure that your DVRs are going to be set to tape SmackDown on Sci-Fi and not USA. And that is February the 13th and February 20th. Those are the two episodes that are going to be affected by this change. And once the Olympics end, SmackDown will be returning to its home at USA. If you were like me and you were concerned that Javon Evans was maybe injured because of the way that awkward match ending that happened on Raw this past week, the ref did stop the match due to an apparent injury, but it looks as if we may have dodged a bullet and that it may have only been precautionary. The match went to commercial. When we come back from commercial, we see that there's some stalling going on. The ref is checking on Javon, and pretty much shortly after we come back from break, the ref stoppage occurs. And so that led to a lot of speculation as to what exactly was wrong. Javon was kind of clutching his arm, his wrist. It apparently wasn't either of those things he was selling. Apparently, in the match that Javon was having with El Grande Americano, the two accidentally collided heads, and Javon got the worst of it. Appeared to be showing some signs of maybe being out of it a little bit, and so the refs were worried about a concussion, and it was decided to call the match. He was allowed to fly afterwards, which if you have a concussion, they won't let you do. So if he was cleared to fly, then it appears that he may have dodged a bullet on the concussion and hopefully will not have to miss any time. Speaking of high flying, when you think of Lucha Libre, the first wrestler I know that comes to mind is The Undertaker. I kid, of course. But apparently the dead man is playing a role in AAA, which WWE bought last year. The dead man has been backstage in the gorilla position for the last few AAA shows, and reports were that he was even helping to book some of those events. The dead man pretty much confirmed as much on the latest Cody Rhodes podcast, where he said he had been, quote, doing some stuff with AAA without getting specific. But then, of course, he went on to talk about his vision for, he thinks, what the direction should be for AAA, and obviously sounding as if he was a member of the creative team. Very interesting development, but it does make a lot of sense if you think about it. Undertaker has been rather forthcoming that he was interested in joining the creative team and working that capacity for WWE. Those chairs on the main event roster are pretty full right now, and especially for someone who hasn't had that backstage role, it does make sense that maybe WWE start him at a AAA, let him get his feet wet and learn and help that brand to grow and see where it takes both the brand and the Undertaker. So very interesting to know. Undertaker helping out on the creative team of AAA. Interesting development. And then we'll end tonight's opening bell with some sad news, and that is our condolences that we would like to give to the family, the friends, and the family of Bobby Duncum Sr., who passed away this week at the age of 81. Duncan was a veteran from the Territories era back in the 70s and into the 80s, is probably the period in which he is most known throughout both the WWF at the time, before becoming WWF, before becoming WWE, of course, as well as the old NWA territories and the AWA as well. In WWF, he had some wild world title bouts against the likes of Bruno Sammartino and Bob Backlund, with both of those gentlemen were champions. Duncan made a heel opponent for those two. In the AWA, he was a champion. He was an AWA tag team champion with his partner Blackjack Lanza, and he also very famously was a member of Bobby Heenan's Heenan family when it first formed. Duncan came to wrestling from the world of football, where he was a star at West Texas A&M. After college, he was drafted to the St. Louis Cardinals in 1967. He actually played 4 NFL games before the end of that career, and then switching over to professional wrestling. He was preceded in death by his son, Bobby Duncum Jr., who was a former WCW wrestler who passed away prematurely in 2000 at the tender age of only 34. Again, our condolences to the Duncum family. And with that, let us move on to our main event. The Royal Rumble is next weekend in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And I don't think we can start a discussion of the matches and our predictions of who is going to win without first setting up that Royal Rumble is the road to WrestleMania. This Royal Rumble, though, is looking a bit different. There's just no way that you can avoid the fact of you're going to have an opinion on the location, right? It's the first time they've taken Royal Rumble outside of North America like this. Not the greatest Royal Rumble, which was not really a Royal Rumble, the greatest Royal Rumble, as they called it, that they did bring to Saudi Arabia when they did 2 Rumbles in a year and gave Saudi Arabia their own. This is the official one and only Royal Rumble, one of the big 4 pay-per-views, and they are taking it to Saudi Arabia. Now, obviously, WWE has been doing a lot of international shows over the last few years, a lot more focus on PLEs occurring in other countries. Completely fine with that. But I do want to make as a point of discussion the fact that the Saudi Arabia location and the entire arrangement that WWE has with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has been from the get-go rife with controversy due to the human rights record of that country. So to take a Royal Rumble over there is, again, giving one of our big 4 away to a country that some folks are not happy that the event is taking place in. Your miles may vary. I will say that I am not a fan of the relationship that brings them there repeatedly, especially considering the human rights record. But take that aside, they used to not do very good shows when they were in Saudi Arabia. They have done much better at making those shows feel like bigger deals over the last year or 2. So I have no doubt in my mind that because of the importance of Royal Rumble as a tent pole event, leading the way to WrestleMania, that this is going to be an A show. It's going to feel like the kind of show that is a major attraction in the way that a Royal Rumble should feel. Now, will there be any hiccups from the talent side? Sometimes there is some issues with the talent going to Saudi Arabia, people who don't want to go, don't feel safe there, whatever. I do feel that too has improved. So I don't, despite however I may feel, you may feel about the location, I do believe that outside of some of the just obvious logistics of starting in the afternoon, the different look and feel of maybe the promotion that the announcers will be doing for Riyadh season, and that I don't think that the in-ring action will be affected by the location. To their credit, the fans there in Saudi Arabia have been really great the last few shows, and I think that they, knowing that they're getting a very special event in Royal Rumble, will bring it. So from just how it's going to look and feel on our TVs, I think you might be able to squint and maybe hide your personal feelings on where it is taking place as far as the politics of the thing. That's the end of my politics discussion. Probably longer than I even wanted it to be, but it can't be. This Royal Rumble can't be talked about without that being the headline, right? So let's get to the matches themselves. And as always, because the Rumble matches being so long, it is a light card. And so let's first talk about the 2 matches that aren't Rumble events and predict winners and losers in those. There are 2 big matches that they're bringing to Saudi Arabia. The first I want to talk about is AJ Styles versus Gunther in a career-threatening match, as it's being called. Back in the old school territory days, they would call it a loser leave town match, but there's no other town really to go to for AJ. He's done it all in the wrestling world. he is made it very clear that 2026 will feature his last match. He just wasn't clear as to when that match would be. So, knowing that and fans knowing that he is leaving at some point, it gives this a lot more juice than your normal retirement match, right? So typically, when you get a match that would be this early in the year, you would think they're going to stretch this out. AJ Styles is retiring. He's going to milk it all the way that they did John Cena's, sell merchandise, do a lot of pay-per-views on it. I wouldn't necessarily guarantee that. Not everybody is John Cena. Not everybody wants to be John Cena. John Cena is kind of on his own level. AJ famously made his WWE debut at Royal Rumble. And so in many ways, it would be a full circle moment to end it at Royal Rumble 10 years later. I don't know that he necessarily goes on to have a WrestleMania match. There was part of me at first that thought it can't be ending this soon. They just announced a month or so ago that he'd be stepping away. But I don't know, again, that AJ Styles is the kind that doesn't already feel at peace with his decision and would be just fine to end it early. And if it sounds like I'm predicting that Gunther is going to take AJ Styles out in his final year in the first month of that year, yeah, that is going to be my prediction. And here's the reasons. Here's the few reasons why. AJ seems very satisfied with the fact that he's ready to call it a career. Gunther can't lose a month and a half after retiring John Cena. You got so much out of that rub of Gunther being the guy who retired John Cena, the guy who previously retired Goldberg, and now he has an opportunity to take out a third Hall of Famer. I think he does. I think AJ Styles will show up Mania weekend as a entrant into the Hall of Fame, reportedly alongside of John Cena. Those two would make great headliners for the Hall of Fame class this year. I think AJ is content, especially after that match he had with Shinsuke last night, to walk away doing one more banger with Gunther. Obviously, it will be a banger if it's those two in the ring, but I am going with Gunther retiring AJ Styles in this scenario. Moving on to our world title match, we have Drew McIntyre, who recently acquired that belt, taking on Sami Zayn, who recently became the number one contender after winning the four-way match that took place last night, as of this recording, on Saturday night's main event. That was an amazing four-way match, and while the ending probably wasn't in question because of the hometown crowd of Montreal getting behind Sami Zayn and the past history that Sami Zayn has with Drew McIntyre, will we get that kind of magic again in Saudi Arabia? Sami Zayn is Middle Eastern descent, and he is a huge fan favorite in that part of the world. They absolutely adore him. Obviously, Sami is adored everywhere, but he is even bigger deal in the Middle East. So could they have pulled the trigger, moving that title off of Cody Rhodes? That shocking Friday Night SmackDown title switch that had Cody drop to Drew McIntyre. Could they have done that in order to move the title onto a different face and give Sami a world title run before his time in the ring is through? I do believe that before all is said and done, Sami Zayn is going to hold that world title. I think he makes an excellent underdog babyface fighting for a title, hopefully coming his way finally at a WrestleMania or someplace. I think it'll be emotional. I think tears will be shed. I don't know that this is going to be that moment. I don't think we're quite to that moment just yet. I almost talked myself into the fact of the Montreal 1 week, the Saudi Arabia the next week would be an amazing platform and opportunity to have Sami in to finally finish that quest for a world title. I just started to talk myself more out of it the more I started thinking logically. Drew McIntyre's title reign is probably not going to end without some combination of Jacob Fatu and or Cody Rhodes. I feel that those two men, because of the way that Drew managed to get the title because of the animosity between the three of them, that those other two will factor back into however Drew loses the title, whether it is to Sami Zayn in this instance or whether it is to Cody or Jacob themselves later on down the line. Probably not a booking coincidence that Drew inserted himself into the Cody Rhodes Jacob Fatu match on Saturday night's main event, which does make me feel like those three have unfinished business, and that the unfinished business will continue beyond Royal Rumble, and that the title will still be at play. We'll see. I'm going Drew in this instance. Sorry, Sami. Which brings us back to the Royal Rumble match itself. And it probably is not unfair to say that the Royal Rumble is the hardest match to predict in all of professional wrestling because of the many, many options they have when it comes to constructing these matches. There also is the fact that between Royal Rumble and WrestleMania, you have another pay-per-view that they can always use to reshuffle the deck. It used to be, when you had the long gap between Mania and Royal Rumble, that it was pretty transparent the direction they were going, which made predicting winners a whole lot more clear. Now we have the addition of broadcasts like Saturday Night's Main Event or Elimination Chamber, or the fact that you have a men and women's Royal Rumble match now, so you don't always have to send the fans home happy by giving them the obvious face. You have plenty of time to change. You also have two world champions, right? So it used to be whoever the world champion was, the Royal Rumble winner goes directly to there. Well, now you have two options from which they can pick. So the extra variables have allowed for some more unpredictability, which is great as a viewer, right? But it does make it more difficult to decide. But there are some folks that are more likely than others to be a Royal Rumble winner. There are folks that we know and love that stand no chance. So let's do this. We will talk about those that are currently entered in the Royal Rumble, the four that we think are most likely to be there standing at the end as viable winners, because by that point, that is when you get the mid-card out of the ring usually. And then who we think is going to be challenging at WrestleMania. We know that over the course of this week, we'll probably get a lot of additional entrants for the women's Royal Rumble match and the men's. But at this time, who we have currently stated to appear are Rhea Ripley, Io Sky, Liv Morgan, Roxanne Perez, Raquel Rodriguez, Asuka, Bayley, Lyra Valkyria, Jordan Grace, Chelsea Green, Alexa Bliss, Charlotte Flair, Lash Legend, Nia Jax, and Julia. Okay, who are our final four? Who is it that would be folks that will give you the impression when you're down to the tense moments at the end that, oh, this could go either way? I think that you have to say that a Rhea Ripley and a Io Sky, Charlotte Flair, Alexa Bliss, all of those are your usual suspects, right? People who have that WrestleMania resume that have been in and or around the main event. But a name that is not on there yet, and that is someone who I think is going to be making a surprise return, and I want to put in my final four. That is a Bianca Belair. So if I had to say we're down to the end, I think we're going to have three of the bigger competitors. I think, and I mean that by size, like a Rhea Ripley, I believe. I think a Raquel Rodriguez now is going to be there. I think Bianca will be a surprise entrant returning from injury, and I think that she is in the mix. And I will throw in an Alexa Bliss as well as possible final four. I think of those final four, if Belair is in there, I think that Belair wins it, because I believe that the direction we're going, if Bianca Belair is healthy enough, is that we are going to get Bianca Belair versus Jade Cargill at WrestleMania. If the match, it can happen, that is. So if Belair is physically able, she's in the Rumble, and she is my choice to win it. If they go another route, who Not that Stephanie Vaquer is necessarily going to be the champ come Mania time, but if it's Stephanie Vaquer, who would be a legitimate possible opponent for her? I think if they go that direction, it very well could be a different Final Four that they would throw in there. But obviously, you could always count on a Rhea Ripley or an Io Sky. They could go with some of those individuals as well. Any other surprises that we can think of? I mean, TNA obviously has that relationship with WWE right now. NXT has been receiving so many call-ups to the main roster. It wouldn't be surprised to get someone's feet wet at NXT by bringing them up. I think if it happens, definitely there's a lot more of the women in NXT that are probably ready to go on the main roster as opposed to on the men's division. So I think if we get NXT call-ups, you're going to see it in the women's Royal Rumble. So expect there to be some NXT faces. Expect there to be one or two folks from TNA because of the relationship. I think that we need to count out that you're going to see, a Flamma or someone like that, Sexy Star, some of the AAA ladies as well. I definitely think that in the men's Royal Rumble match, which I'm now moving on to, let's go ahead and say AAA is going to make an appearance in that contest as well. Mr. Iguana, obviously, wouldn't be surprised Vinkingo or Psycho Clown, Pagan. I think that Santos Escobar, who recently made his return, they returned him on the AAA brand. I think that because of his familiarity with the WWE audience, I think that in the men's Royal Rumble, he is a legitimate surprise entrant. So, talking a few of those surprises, let's talk about who's already committed. Not nearly as many as what we have at this taping with the women's match, but we do in the men's match have right now Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes, Gunther, Jey Uso, Rey Mysterio, Dragon Lee, Penta, Solo Sikoa, Jacob Fatu. All right. Final four. There's a lot of heavy hitters in the folks who have declared. I obviously think we have to at least tease that Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes are possible winners. Cody would join the rarefied company of being a three-time winner should he win. But as far as the other two, watch the booking earlier. If Gunther loses to AJ Styles, I think he gets his heat back by being an odds-on favorite for winning a Royal Rumble to have a path to a main event slot. So he will be in the Final Four if he loses early on. If he doesn't lose to AJ and he retires AJ, he doesn't necessarily need to be around at the end. But because I think he is going to retire AJ, I'm going to say it's going to be at the end standing tall Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes, Penta, and Jacob Fatu. Actually, I'm subbing Penta for someone who's yet to declare. I think Penta will have a good showing, but I don't think he is a legitimate possibility at this point in his career of being considered someone that they would move into the main event of WrestleMania. I want to say, though, someone who is yet to declare, Bron Breakker is going to find a way, storyline-wise, they'll find a way to get him out of that suspension, enter him in the Royal Rumble. If that happens, he will have a big run where he looks like the beast and monster that he is, spears to everyone, presses over the top rope, throwing people outside left and right. I think if Bron Breakker is in this, he's in the Final Four, and I'm going to predict him to win. We can definitely go with a Cody Rhodes as a three-peat. I do feel like we're on the verge, though. Just on the verge. It's going to be a slow boil now of Cody Rhodes turning heel. I feel some of the fan reactions have been less, and he's getting some heel reactions at times even. So I think that they would be smart during Mania season to turn Cody more sanctimonious. There are signs that they're already doing that, and that he would make a good heel opponent for someone at WrestleMania. There is a lot of talk, there has been, about a Cody Roman 3 occurring possibly on the show of shows. If that's the case, they don't need the title for that, right? So I don't know that it's Cody's to win. I do feel like, especially when it comes to our world champions, We have relied so much these last few years on veteran talent, whether that has been, a John Cena, or when you get to Mania season, you get those special returns where you get The Rock comes back or Brock Lesnar comes back. Even your CM Punks and your Seth Rollins and your Drew McIntyres, like our world title scene, even those guys that are on the younger side are still not young. I do think that the business needs to start thinking of how they work in younger talent to solidify that main event scene for years to come, because the guys they've been relying on will not be around or able to do it forever. I think it's a great spot to elevate folks. Last year, they gave us a surprise. They didn't go the route that everyone just assumed they would go by giving it to John Cena. They swerved us thinking that it was John, and then at the very end, they gave us a new face, at least in the main event scene, and that was Jey Uso. Your take on how successful that was, it may vary. I think that the fact that he's back in tag teams, at least for me, says that maybe they were not successful in creating a future main event singles performer. But I do believe that Bron Breakker is that younger talent that has the pedigree with his family. He has the backing of Paul Heyman and the backing of the vision. He has the look. He has the mic skills. He has the in-ring skills as well. And he's young and he's different. And there's definitely some matchups that they could get there that we have not seen before in the main event. Obviously, he's got a test run at main event status with his match that he had on the first Raw of this year, where he was challenging Punk for the world title. He came up short. A rematch at WrestleMania, while it may still seem like a long way away, is not out of the question, especially if Bron Breakker manages to, storyline-wise, get inserted into the Royal Rumble coming back from suspension. If that happens, we may be on our way to seeing a rematch of Punk and Bron Breakker at WrestleMania. I hope that happens. I think that Bron Breakker would be a right choice for a Royal Rumble win in 2026 and moving in the right direction for making our main event level of talent younger. And with that, that is the 4 matches we currently have scheduled for WrestleMania. Who do you think is going to walk away as Royal Rumble winners on the road to WrestleMania? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think AJ is going out on his back on this night, or will his own version of a retirement tour continue into 2026? Want to know what you think. With that, let's go ahead and hit our big finish for the week. We're going to first talk about the botch of the week. I know we're still early in 2026, and I therefore have not yet mentioned this, but I am going to go ahead and call out for this week WWE for returning SmackDown in 2026 to 3 hours. We love wrestling, obviously. We love wrestling, but 3-hour SmackDowns are hard on the attention span of viewers. They are hard on the talent. They're hard on the creative team, especially when they come on the night before they're doing a Saturday night's main event. So then you're committing to 2 more hours. So creatively, attention span wise, talent wise, you just are almost burning out your core audience by just having too much of a good thing. And that is the reason why my botch of the week, it's going to go to WWE for returning SmackDown to 3 hours. 2 hours was plenty. Performance of the week. I just called out WWE for giving us too much wrestling as a botch. But I'm also, for my performer of the week, I'm giving credit to WWE for giving us all this great wrestling to watch. I'm talking out both sides of my mouth, yes, but 3-hour SmackDowns are too long. My performance of the week going to WWE is for the fact that now we can watch AAA. I think that it's definitely more palatable to watch multiple hours of wrestling when there's a different flavor to them. And for many American viewers anyway, AAA is something that they have not had a ton of access to. 2 weeks ago, WWE started a new relationship with Fox in Latin America, where the AAA show is being broadcast on Fox, which is great. I hope they continue this, though. But for us in America, these last 2 weeks worth of shows have also appeared on WWE's YouTube channel with English language commentary. Doug and I, when they first announced that the WWE was acquiring AAA, Doug and I both were very hopeful that this meant maybe an English language broadcast of AAA so that the American fans could follow the product on a regular basis. And we knew they had great action. You'd occasionally watch a match, maybe turn on the subtitles, but it just was not quite the same investment as when you understand what's going on and when you can see them on a regular basis. So let's hope this continues and that it is an official thing that WWE's version of AAA airs on their YouTube channel on Saturday nights. At least it has the last 2 weeks. We've had Corey Graves as your lead commentator, JBL on color commentary. This past week, they had Rey Mysterio on color commentary. So all of that, as I mentioned earlier, too, Undertaker possibly on the creative team. When you have that much main roster, legendary WWE performers helping out with the product, I think that it shows that they are committed to AAA, and it is a very quick and interesting hour of wrestling programming that I think with all we have, I know it's a lot. I would suggest we can find 60 minutes to devote to AAA once a week. Again, it is a very different flavor of wrestling. It is not your normal WWE type broadcast. So it's a good change of pace, and I'm all here for it. And that leads us to match of the week. And there are several great options this week. I really loved the CM Punk Finn Balor contest from Raw out of Belfast on Monday. I liked last night's main event, the Fatal 4-Way, that was the feel-good ending on Saturday night's main event, where you had Sami Zayn walk away with the title. You also had some great action on Dynamite this week. AEW showed up as well. I liked their Collision match that they put on in the main event, which was actually a CMLL match where you had Claudio Castagnoli defending the CMLL world title against Roderick Strong. It was a very strong week in professional wrestling. Even TNA, who improved greatly on their debut episode on AMC, had matches that were every bit of, every match they had was better than any of the matches outside of the main event of their debut broadcast. So if you missed wrestling this week, go back into the DVR, watch any of those that I just mentioned, because there was some good action to be had this week. But if I had to narrow it down to a single match, how can you sentimentally anyways not go with AJ Styles versus Shinsuke Nakamura? This is Flair Steamboat, right? This is Randy Savage and Rick Steamboat. This is basically two rivals that bring the best out of each other. And to see them revisit that one more time, very likely the last time, even if AJ's career was to continue beyond Royal Rumble, the chances that there's still time to run back a Shinsuke program, who knows? I will say that these two, it may not be 2016 in the Tokyo Dome at Wrestle Kingdom, but they certainly rolled back the clock enough for me to enjoy the match. The crowd were giving This Is Awesome's chance. It was deserved. AJ has not lost the step. Shinsuke looked sharp in the having his historic rival across the ring from him. It was a great contest that saw AJ come out on top. I would highly recommend, if you did not see it, going back and watching Shinsuke Nakamura versus AJ Styles one last time. And with that, I am ready to sign off on another episode of the Two Bros Wrestling Show. I will be popping in on occasion on our channels. I plan on doing so after Royal Rumble to talk winners and losers and what I thought of the event. We are not going to return, though, to our normal broadcast, our normal live broadcast, our normal format until Doug is able to join us. So we may be taking a bit of a hiatus. We will keep you updated on our channels. You definitely want to stay tuned to us because we will be back. And as I said, we will definitely be filming some content, especially around Rumble, especially as we know we're heading into Mania season. So this is not a goodbye. This is just a pause for now, and we're sending all of our love to our brother Doug. And when we have him back, we will be back. Until that time, though, keep an eye on our YouTube and our Facebook channels for more wrestling news. And I appreciate you joining me on this solo edition of the Two Bros Wrestling Show. Enjoy Royal Rumble. We'll talk to you next week.